The walls of Buckingham Palace reportedly stopped feeling safe the moment whispers began spreading that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle could no longer be trusted behind closed doors, not trusted with secrets, not trusted with private family pain. And according to royal author Hugo Vickers, even Queen Elizabeth herself allegedly feared that intimate conversations with her own grandson could somehow end up recorded, exposed, and broadcast to the world like royal ammunition. That is the explosive claim now shaking royal watchers everywhere. Because this was not just palace gossip from anonymous insiders hiding behind tabloids. This came from a man deeply connected to royal history, a man respected inside aristocratic circles, someone who literally built his reputation writing about the monarchy and Queen Elizabeth's life. And now he is suggesting something chilling, that during the final years of the Queen's reign, paranoia and mistrust had allegedly reached such an extreme level that even ordinary conversations inside royal walls became loaded with suspicion. For decades, the monarchy survived because silence was sacred. Royals could argue privately, cry privately, complain privately, and somehow it all stayed buried inside palace corridors forever. But then Harry and Meghan left. Suddenly interviews appeared, podcasts appeared, Netflix appeared, books appeared. Every private disagreement seemed to become global entertainment. Every family fracture became content. And according to Hugo Vickers, palace officials allegedly began wondering one terrifying question. What if private conversations with the Queen herself were no longer truly private?
So Elvin, and with me in the studio today is Hugo Vickers, a writer, lecturer and acknowledged expert on the British royal family. Hugo has written biographies of the Queen Mother, Cecil Beaton, Vivian Leigh, Princess Andrew of Greece and the Duchess of Windsor. But Hugo's new book, Queen Elizabeth II, is coming out on April the 9th to mark the late monarch's centenary, and it is a massive undertaking.
That clip alone reportedly sent shockwaves through royal circles because it exposed just how deep the fear allegedly became. People began obsessing over tiny details. Meghan reportedly touching her collar too often during the Jubilee. Harry and Meghan arriving while rumors exploded online that they could be wired. Social media turned into a frenzy of conspiracy theories. Were microphones hidden beneath clothing? Were conversations secretly being captured for future documentaries or memoirs? Nobody could prove it. But the fact palace insiders allegedly even considered the possibility tells you everything about how damaged trust had supposedly become. And timing made everything worse, much worse. Because while the Sussex drama was exploding publicly, Queen Elizabeth was already carrying enormous emotional weight privately. Prince Philip's health was failing. The Queen herself was aging while still carrying the full constitutional burden of the crown. The palace was already drowning in pressure before the family crisis reached its boiling point. Then came Megxit, and suddenly the monarchy was facing not just internal heartbreak, but global humiliation.
It's not.
Well, trust had been broken, basically.
Right.
And so I think, as far as having somebody in the room, I think certainly there was one time is to stop them taking photographs or being wired, or God knows what they were up to.
What do you mean, wired for telly?
Yeah, wired for recording.
The image of the Queen during those final years now feels haunting when viewed through this lens. An elderly monarch still performing duties, still smiling publicly, still protecting the institution, while reportedly questioning whether even conversations with her own grandson could remain confidential. That is the part many royal observers cannot get past. Because this was never just a political crisis. It allegedly became deeply personal.
The husband of Britain's Queen Elizabeth. You'll remember he's been treated in hospital in London for nearly 2 weeks. Buckingham Palace have released this statement. The Duke of Edinburgh was today transferred from King Edward Hospital to St Bartholomew's Hospital, where doctors will continue to treat him for an infection.
And insiders claim the emotional distance only grew from there. Palace aides allegedly became more cautious. Meetings became more controlled. Access reportedly became tighter. Conversations were no longer casual. Every interaction carried tension underneath it. Not loud tension, quiet tension. The dangerous kind. The kind where people suddenly choose words carefully because they fear those words could later reappear somewhere else, in a documentary, an interview, a memoir, or a streaming deal.
Down a bit and realised he probably took it a little bit too far. I know he's got a lot of supporters, but I think he must realise one day that he probably took things a little bit too far. And some of the dirty linen didn't need to be washed in public, and It's very sad what's happened, because he was so popular in the past, and now his star has fallen somewhat, certainly in this country.
That clip may be one of the most uncomfortable moments in this entire saga, because it openly hints at the possibility that the Queen herself allegedly worried about recordings for Netflix purposes. Think about how extraordinary that sounds. This was Queen Elizabeth II, a woman who spent 75 years protecting royal confidentiality with military discipline, a monarch trained to believe private conversations stay private forever. Yet according to these claims, even she allegedly started questioning the motives surrounding Harry and Meghan's visits. And what happened next reportedly revealed how seriously the palace took those fears. Security around royal access allegedly tightened. Unauthorized photos were reportedly discouraged. Certain interactions became supervised more carefully. Some insiders even suggested palace officials feared hidden recording devices or secretly captured material that could later become commercial content. Suddenly, royal residences stopped feeling like homes and started feeling like controlled institutions guarding themselves from leaks. The saddest part? Harry was once described as the Queen's favorite grandson. That is what makes this entire story feel almost tragic instead of merely scandalous. Because when trust disappears inside a family, affection alone cannot fix it. And according to reports, palace officials allegedly believed the danger was no longer theoretical. Too many private stories had already escaped into public view. Too many conversations had seemingly resurfaced elsewhere. The family allegedly reached a point where they no longer believed reconciliation could happen safely. Observers now look back at those final royal gatherings differently. Every smile suddenly appears strained. Every photo looks calculated. Every carefully staged appearance feels less like family unity and more like damage control hiding behind palace curtains. Even William reportedly felt deeply betrayed by everything that unfolded, with tensions inside the royal household growing heavier as public attacks continued. And through all of it, Queen Elizabeth reportedly kept asking herself not what she wanted emotionally, but what the crown required institutionally. That distinction matters, because according to royal insiders, the Queen allegedly separated her role as grandmother from her role as monarch. Personally, she may have wanted closeness. Institutionally, she believed protecting the monarchy had to come first. That meant distance. That meant caution. That meant sacrifice. What reportedly terrified palace insiders the most was not just the possibility of leaked conversations, it was the realization that the monarchy itself might have permanently lost control of its own narrative. For generations, the royal family operated behind a protective wall of silence. Scandals happened, betrayals happened, arguments happened, but the institution survived because the public rarely saw the raw emotional damage underneath. Then suddenly, everything changed. Harry and Meghan entered a media era where private pain became public currency, and according to palace observers, every new interview only deepened fears that absolutely nothing said behind palace walls was truly safe anymore. That is why the allegations surrounding the Queen's fears hit so hard emotionally, because people are not just hearing claims about palace security measures. They are hearing claims about an elderly grandmother allegedly questioning whether she could speak freely around family members she once trusted completely. That detail alone changes the emotional atmosphere of everything that happened during those final years. It reframes every reunion photo, every balcony appearance, every carefully managed public interaction. Suddenly, those moments no longer look warm and relaxed. They look tense, controlled, almost defensive. And according to reports, palace officials allegedly began reacting accordingly. The monarchy reportedly tightened procedures not because they enjoyed being cold, but because they believed the institution itself was vulnerable. Think about the psychology of that environment for a moment. Staff members allegedly worried that a casual remark could later appear in a memoir. A private joke could become an international headline. A family disagreement could evolve into a multi-million-dollar streaming storyline. Once that fear enters the room, normal relationships reportedly become impossible. Every conversation becomes filtered through caution and suspicion. Royal commentators now believe that this atmosphere slowly poisoned the possibility of reconciliation, because trust inside the monarchy is everything. More than image, more than titles, more than ceremonies. Trust is the hidden engine holding the entire institution together. And according to these allegations, once senior royals allegedly felt that confidentiality had been compromised, emotional doors began closing one by one. one, not publicly, quietly, which is almost worse. No dramatic palace announcements, no explosive confrontations on camera, just increasing distance, shorter interactions, more controlled access, less openness, less warmth. What makes this story even more unsettling is the symbolism behind it. Queen Elizabeth represented stability itself. She survived wars, political crises, scandals, divorces, public outrage, and decades of scrutiny while somehow keeping the monarchy intact through discipline and silence. Yet, according to Hugo Vickers, even she allegedly reached a point where doubts surrounding Harry and Meghan created genuine anxiety inside palace life. That image is difficult for royal supporters to process because it suggests the Queen's final years were emotionally far more painful than the public fully realized. And many observers believe the Oprah interview marked a turning point from which the family never emotionally recovered. Because after that interview, every royal interaction allegedly carried the fear of future exposure. The monarchy reportedly stopped viewing private conversations as permanently private. Instead, insiders allegedly began wondering whether today's emotional discussion could become tomorrow's headline. That kind of atmosphere changes everything. It destroys spontaneity. It destroys vulnerability. And according to royal commentators, it destroyed any realistic path back to full family trust. The tragedy here is that Queen Elizabeth reportedly never stopped loving Harry. That is the contradiction making this entire story so emotionally explosive. She may have felt hurt. She may have felt disappointed. She may have allegedly feared breaches of privacy, but many believe she still viewed Harry as family until the very end, and that emotional conflict reportedly forced her into impossible decisions. As grandmother, she wanted unity. As monarch, she believed she had to protect the institution above personal feelings, so every choice became painful either way. Meanwhile, the media frenzy surrounding Harry and Meghan reportedly only intensified palace anxiety. Every documentary announcement sparked panic. Every new interview reopened wounds. Every leaked detail reportedly reinforced fears that boundaries no longer existed. Royal insiders allegedly began seeing the Sussexes less as private family members and more as unpredictable public figures capable of turning intimate royal tensions into global entertainment within weeks. Whether fair or unfair, that perception reportedly spread deeply inside palace circles, and the public noticed something strange happening too. Royal appearances involving Harry increasingly felt awkward. Conversations looked forced. Body language looked stiff. Smiles seemed rehearsed instead of natural. There was always this invisible layer of discomfort hanging in the air, as if everyone inside the palace knew something the public only suspected, as if behind every carefully staged photograph was a family walking through emotional landmines while pretending everything remained normal. Perhaps the most heartbreaking detail is how many royal commentators believe the Queen's extraordinary legacy became overshadowed by endless family warfare during her final years. Instead of celebrating her 75 years of discipline, sacrifice, and service, headlines became consumed by feuds, accusations, betrayals, and public attacks. The monarchy stopped discussing her leadership and started discussing royal chaos, and according to many insiders, that deeply saddened her. Some royal observers even argue that the palace's alleged fears about recordings symbolize something much bigger: the complete collapse of old royal culture in the modern media age. Queen Elizabeth belonged to a generation that believed dignity required silence. Harry and Meghan entered a world where personal storytelling became power. Those two philosophies were always destined to collide eventually. But nobody expected the collision to allegedly reach a point where the Queen herself reportedly feared confidentiality could no longer be guaranteed. And now, years later, the questions still refuse to disappear. Were palace fears exaggerated? Did paranoia spiral beyond reality? Or did the royal family genuinely believe private conversations could someday resurface publicly through books, interviews, or documentaries? That mystery continues haunting every discussion surrounding Harry, Meghan, and the Queen's final years, because no matter which side people support, one uncomfortable truth keeps surfacing again and again. Once trust inside the monarchy allegedly collapsed, nothing inside the royal family ever looked the same afterward.